Being a so-called jazz musician, making a living at it, obviously doesn't involve just playing $30 jazz gigs every night. I mean, sometimes it does and it adds up, but mostly, we do everything.
Welcome to another episode of Contrabass Conversations, your show covering life on the low end of the spectrum. I'm your host, Jason Heath. I'm so glad you're here today. And check out our website, contrabassconversations.com, for everything that's going on here. I am so happy to bring you the first ever all jazz week here on the podcast. So you can check out everything that's going on this week, as well as all the jazz content we've had in the past at contrabassconversations.com/jazz. This week we're speaking with 4 artists that are active in diverse areas of jazz and other styles as well, different parts of the country, different stages of their career. And then at the end of the week, we are putting together an episode featuring highlights from all these great artists that we've spoken with in the past. So today we are featuring Matt Ulery, who is an artist active in Chicago. I've known Matt for years through DePaul University. I can't tell you how many times we bumped into each other in and out of the bass room, or I was teaching a lesson in the bass room annoyingly, and he had to come get his amp. And we ended up chatting more and more over the years. And I just found his career and its trajectory so interesting. And he's a great example of somebody who's making it happen, not in New York City, which I think is an interesting topic and something we dig into here. How you can make a living and thrive as a creative artist, and what that portfolio career looks like in different parts of the country, like Chicago. So we start off talking about an interview that Matt did with a mutual friend of ours named Zach Brock. And I've got a link in the show notes to that podcast. So that's kind of the launching point. We dig into records in general, why Matt started his own record label, how he integrates all these various projects into his living, social media and the challenges to that, balancing your time, the bureaucratic work versus the creative work, and many other topics. Great conversation with Matt. I'd also like to thank D'Addario Strings for sponsoring the podcast and let you know about our giveaway with them for Kaplan strings. D'Addario is giving away 10 sets of Kaplan strings to Contrabass Conversations listeners. And you can enter that giveaway. If you've entered a giveaway in the past, we did the giveaway for Zyx and for Helica. You can enter this again. It's okay. At contrabassconversations.com/strings. And Kaplan strings, which I'm using right now, they are stranded steel core strings, and they provide clarity and warmth in all registers. They're used by musicians like, and these are people that have been on the podcast. There are many others, but here are some people that use Kaplans that are past podcast guests: Andres Martin, Anthony Stoops, Klaus Freudenstein, Craig Butterfield, Daniel Kimbrough, David Allen Moore, Mark Morton, Mike Valerio. The list goes on and on. C extensions are available, solo tuning's available, light, medium, and heavy tension. Great strings. Check them out, and thanks to Dario. Thank you also to the Violin Shop, which offers the Southeast's largest inventory of laminate, hybrid, and carved double basses. So whether you're looking for an entry-level laminate or a fine pedigree instrument, there's always a unique selection ready for you to try. And trade-ins and consignments are welcome. You can also get a rental from the Violin Shop. They offer a variety of rental options for seasoned musicians or first-timers, long and short-term rental programs, which is great if you're coming in town for a gig and you don't want to fly with your bass and that whole nightmare. They offer rentals designed to fit each player's particular needs. You can call the Violin Shop for a short-term rental. Check out that info and much more at bassviolinshop.com. And also, check out Rosin Saver, rosinsaver.com. I have a special offer for all my listeners. Promo code HEATH, HEATH, at checkout for 10% off any and all orders from rosinsaver.com. All the cool kids, including me, are using Rosin Saver. I really love it. It works great. And check them out again, rosinsaver.com, promo code HEATH. You're also going to be hearing a couple excerpts from Matt's latest album, Festival. So check that out, link in the show notes. And I'm so thrilled to bring you this conversation with my old friend, Matt Ulery. So I thought it'd be interesting to start. I used to go like, hey, early years and talk with people about all that. But I usually, these days, I've been just like diving right in and talking.
Great.
And so listening to your episode with Zach, and you were talking about Chicago and just like making it as an artist in Chicago. And I lived in Chicago for 22, 23 years. I thought it might be kind of interesting to start with making a living in a place like Chicago. Like, I think the perception is that if you're going to make it in jazz, you have to move to New York. That's sort of the conventional wisdom. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, as far as I know, New York has been, since the 30s, sort of the mecca for jazz musicians and other musicians alike. But I mean, specifically jazz. Part of it's because of the whole record label scene in the industry, all that, that makes sense. That's obvious. And I feel like that's still the case because just so many people move there to try and meet people that can play, great players, and try and, make it there. And certainly I've thought about that a lot. But I've pretty much only lived in Chicago, so I'm fortunate enough to have never had to relocate to any place to try and make music because I just kind of eased into it since I was in high school, just playing gigs and stuff. So I find that Chicago has a really beautiful community and it's growing and it's expanding, it's changing, and more. There's just so many great players all over the world, just making smaller than New York regional scenes and making great art with it. And making a living in Chicago, as far as I've heard from other people, say who live in New York, it's just way more possible. It's kind of a double-edged sword kind of a thing because there's less musicians, so less competition in a way, but less really truly great musicians here than say in New York. So I mean it's kind of a give and take. But music isn't everything. Playing gigs and making money of that isn't everything to life. So we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, quality of life, the money you make and the gigs you play factors in for sure. But there's a lot more than just that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And being a so-called jazz musician and a professional, making a living at it, obviously doesn't involve just playing $30 jazz gigs every night. I mean, sometimes it does and it adds up, but mostly, we do everything. We play all styles.
Yeah. Like what else do you do outside of? Talk us through a typical month in the life of Matt.
Okay, I have my own things that I write and I lead my projects. I probably realistically only get to do that as a leader. Say, lead one of my projects once a month on average. Sometimes we do a tour or something. It's more, but I'll do anything from. Play a few weddings a month, anything from like a jobbing jazz kind of a thing, like cocktail art trio thing, or full on R&B dance sets, electric bass, doing a lot of different various studio work for people. I do a lot of arranging for different things. I teach 1 day a week at Loyola University, which has been great. And just a dozen or two or three original music projects of my friends that I play bass in, and like filling the days with rehearsals of those things, and hundreds of hours sitting at the computer doing email and that kind of a thing, like any other hustler.
That's a big component of doing your own thing these days, isn't it? That computer work. Like,
totally.
How do you balance that with having time to create? Like you got the bureaucratic job and you've got the dreamer job. Like how do you do one in the morning, one in the afternoon, or how does that work?
Yeah, good question. I feel like probably just have to prioritize day by day.
Yeah.
For example, managerial logistical things. I need to respond to these 30 emails today or else.
Right.
Something.
Right.
And try and fit in a little bit of creative stuff, like a lot of things. I'm always looking for that little spark that I can grab, like catch and put in my pocket. So I might be sitting down and doing emails and I have my piano set up right there, and it might take 10 seconds and just put my hands on the keyboard and whoops, something, I found something maybe. And like, okay, I'm going to take a little note there and set it aside and getting back to the other less exciting things. And then, try and carve out some time every day to just sort of hash it out, whether it's, writing or arranging or trying to practice one of my instruments.
I always love talking with people about who are creatives, who are actually creating, not necessarily like playing in a bass section, but you're actually creating. I always find it fascinating what different people do. Like this friend of mine, Andres Martin, lives down in Tijuana and writes, just a beautiful composer, but he has this orchestra job. So he always has his manuscript paper on the stand next to him. And he's just like, oh, I got to write down this idea, got to do this. And for him, it's like, it just pops into his head at certain times of day. So it's similar for you. It sounds like you're like working on something. Yeah.
And it's the kind of work that, you're always bringing it home. There's not like, it's great. I love those kinds of gigs, like bass gigs, section type stuff or something where not where I can like phone it in, because obviously that's not cool, but something where I can just show up, just kill it and then go home and I don't have to think about it anymore because there's so many other things. And it's a nice challenge, the challenge to push yourself to be really as creative as you can be, and not only just creative, but just to work really hard so that you can accomplish something. Because we have good taste. This is why we started in the first place. So we want to do something that's really great, and not just kind of fall back on what we've got to it, up to this point.
So in like the world so you're playing, the type of gigs we all know, like wedding gigs and cocktail gigs and stuff like that. But then these creative gigs, and most of the people that listen to this don't live in Chicago. Can you maybe talk through some of the spaces that you play in or that you like to play in? Yeah.
Yeah. I find when playing some, my or my friends' original music, which might be heavily composed, might be chamber music, it might be extremely open and improvised with some direction. A lot of these spaces are essentially bars, clubs. Fortunately, there are a lot of great spaces that have series where people kind of know, it's Sunday night at the Hungry Brain and it's a bar, but it's a concert. And so those kinds of spaces are mainly, essentially bars and little small performance-specific venues that are, destination spaces that people go to just for the show. A lot of DIY stuff, house concerts. And then, of course, that stuff makes it to bigger stages as well, like festivals and concert halls occasionally. As far as in Chicago, a lot of things change when you, say, go to Europe or something, where it's, I think, a different kind of appreciation for that kind of a thing. But
how do you these are things that people are always asking me about. So I'm curious, like what you do. How do you use what we've got in 2016, like emailing, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, to like get the word out about your projects? Like what's most effective for you? I know it's like an art as much.
Yeah. It is a craft that I'm not very good at. Feels such a shameless activity to try and be creative, and then you're like getting out there and talking about yourself. But if you don't, no one else will. And hopefully, you're talking about it, so thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. But it's one of those things I think we struggle with as like artists, right? Like for me, I've got this punk rock aesthetic, right? It's like people just find what I do, man. It's like selling out to talk. But I have become more comfortable with representing myself online just because, like you said, like no one else will. And that's like the era we live in.
Yeah, we have to. And we have to talk about other people so that people talk about us too. And I think the word of mouth thing is extremely important and potentially the only thing left over right now. And social media is word of mouth. It's exactly the same thing. So, I embrace it. It's hard to get in there all the time as much as we should, because obviously everyone has just an incredible amount of material coming at them every day, and it's hard to carve out the time to just do that.
Yeah, because it's another administrative task, right? It's another one of those things that you got to get in and do. Yeah, no, I know, and there's like 20 minutes less for your creative activities, right? Along with checking the email and everything.
2 hours. I mean, so much more or less. And I've worked with some people before, like labels in the past, and have just been on me like, it's been 4 days since your last tweet, and I'm thinking like, yeah, I know, I'm just a bass player. trying to deal here.
4 days is your last tweet. I love that. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, that's like such an element of our lives. Like, I never in a million years, if you'd asked like 20-year-old Jason what he'd be doing, I never would have predicted I would have been spending so much time thinking about like that kind of stuff. But I see. So you were involved with David Douglas, right? Dave Douglas and Greenleaf. Did you have some projects on that? How did that come to be?
That's incredible opportunity for me. I have 3 albums on Greenleaf Music.
Yeah.
It came to be essentially my first 3 albums that I made. I was just, sending it to Dave Douglas, and I sort of knew him peripherally, and I'm certainly a big fan. And after a first 3 records that I put out, he finally was interested in getting on board with his label. And we did 3 great records on that label that I wrote. It was all my original stuff. And they put it out, and I've since moved on from that label with my own label, which is super exciting.
Yeah. Is this new album the first release on this new label?
It's actually the third.
The third, okay.
But I stepped it up sort of logistically as far as what my label is doing. Before, in my first 2 albums, I just, it's the kind of thing where I wasn't hooking up with any labels, and then so I just stuck a name on it, stuck a record label name on it, and like did the whole CD Baby thing, and that's all out there. But now, having worked with 2 or 3 different labels since I sort of just made it up, I know what any small jazz record label or classical independent label is going to do, and I'm going to just do it myself because I learned a lot in the process of working with, say, with Greenleaf. I'm just doing everything any other label would do with my own, and I don't expect to be putting out other people's music necessarily because I can't do anything for them financially. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, CD Baby, that's a great way the people use to put out their music, and then you've started your own label. Like, why might somebody pick one or the other? Like, what are the advantages or disadvantages of CD Baby versus just doing what you're doing?
Sure. Well, for the record, I think CD Baby is kind of on its way out, if not totally gone.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, actually.
And I'm working on pulling my music from there. I would say and second of all, Bandcamp is kind of the go-to store for independent artists. And most labels are just using Bandcamp as their store anyway. So I've got my own Bandcamp store. I also have a Bandcamp store on the Greenleaf Music page, so that's kind of the main sort of middleman for selling your music and scores and things like that.
Well, I remember Bandcamp coming up. I mean, I don't sell my own music, so I'm like real out of the loop with all that. But when did that sort of become the go-to standard for independent artists?
I think it's been around for a little while, but I feel like within the last year, really, the industry is totally upside down. So it's got to distill at some point, and I think right now it's Bandcamp. It's simple. It's tied in with some of the other big companies like PayPal. I don't love the way it works, but it seems to be the go-to for labels. So I'm using it now, and I'm in the process of getting all of my stuff on my site so everything can be in the same place. And part of the reason why I wanted to go with my own label basically from now on is because, this is my 7th record that I just put out, and it's very much a jazz record, but the last one wasn't, and the next one probably won't be either. So the idea of sort of finding the right home for it at a label that's just going to do stuff that I can do myself, it's kind of daunting. So I just want to move forward with my own essentially brand, I guess, if you want to put it like that, because I just want to keep making art and getting it out and not messing around with other people.
Right. And I mean, with the leveling of the playing field, like we've got now, right? Like there really is, and especially if you're not getting marketing help from a major label, you're just contributing a percentage of what you make to somebody. You know,
that's that. There's that too, the whole money thing.
Yeah. Interesting. And so I love you've got a double vinyl LP. Do you have an LP? Okay, that's awesome.
Yep.
What are you a big listener of the LPs? Is that how you like to consume music, or how come you decided to do that?
I like it all. I like CDs. I like streaming. I like all varieties. I don't discriminate, but I think that vinyl, that's the original thing, right? I don't think it's ever going to go away. And as you know, a lot like CD sales are way down. People are buying them though, and people will buy them at shows especially. But obviously, there's no stores, and I just wanted to, just for having for posterity, having the record on a record. We made CDs too, and it's all digital and all of that, of course. But I feel like there's certain people that when they buy music, they're only going to buy vinyl.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have that option.
Yeah, no, it's cool. There's like this timelessness to vinyl. Like you put it right next to your Coltrane record, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people, that little CD is going to get lost eventually. But people who have records, they're going to put it in their record collection, and they're going to, maybe pick it up in 10 years. But they're not going to pick up their old CD that they just found. That's the way I see it. And I personally like records too. I don't buy a whole lot of brand new records, but it's special. It's a special experience. You just it's tangible, and you put the record on.
Well, and just having the artwork, that size of media, right?
Totally.
That it gives you enough room to really. I used to work at the listening center at Northwestern, which was. I don't know how it is now, but the entire room was just all surrounded by jazz records, right? Like classic jazz records. And I remember just walking through there and pulling like an Ella album and just like opening it up, and you can read the liner notes. And these CDs, I mean, it's just not the same thing. And now with streaming, we don't even get the CD experience, right?
You just get the tiny square.
You get the tiny square, the visual, and people have tried. iTunes was doing these extended bonus features albums. I know they probably still are, but like it's tough. We just have lost kind of that visual element to our music in a lot of ways. Have you figured out any ways to incorporate like visual, like with the listening experience? I don't know. Like, do you put your stuff on YouTube or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't really. I know people really love to see a video.
Yeah,
and there are some sort of generated videos out there that just is audio, but it's on a video.
Yeah, yeah,
kind of funny. It sounds worse too.
Right.
I mean, like I said, I could do a lot more work to promote myself personally. I would love to make music videos and have some visual element there, but you can't do everything.
You can't do everything, and it's tough when we're talking about audio. We're living in an era of video, right? Like that's what's so powerful, and Facebook Live and YouTube Live and all this, and it's tough. And we exist although watching a concert's awesome. That's the real experience. But our art is represented in audio, right? That's how people consume it mostly. And it's just tough. I think about that with these podcasts, right? Like it's tough to figure out using something like Facebook or Twitter. Like, hey, stop scrolling and listen to my 50-minute audio interview, right? Like it's just hard. It's hard for these long durational experiences, like listening to an album or listening to a podcast or something. It's hard to figure out how to work that into our ADD existence.
Right. I mean, that's the way. I mean, I think of it like music like that. Art music. It's art. It's a long-term sort of commitment to listen to a record. I mean, and also not necessarily. You can listen to a side. My new record has 4 sides, and you can listen to a side. It's like 18 minutes long. Or you can listen to a track for any record, or a podcast. You can listen to the first 10 minutes and then pause it. And it's sort of, I feel like it's fine. I mean, I don't have to convince anybody that they should really do it better, listen better or more, because they're going to or they're not. And it's art. And when we're making it's cool to talk about music and talk about business, but then when we're doing music, we're just doing music. We're not thinking about that other thing. We're just hopefully a little bit more in the moment with it. It's really wonderful to just reflect and talk with other people in the communities about it, and listen to what other people have to say, like on your podcasts, and it's fascinating.
Matt, thanks again for chatting. And folks, learn more about everything he's up to. This great creative artist making it happen in Chicago, this interesting career, at his website, mattulery.com, mattulery.com. If you'd like to check out all the other people that we've spoken with in the world of jazz, contrabassconversations.com/jazz will get you there. I hope you're enjoying this week. I love doing thematic weeks like this. I've done several in the past, and I'm planning on doing several more in the future. Thanks for following along with this, whether this is your first episode, your 340th episode, or somewhere in between. I appreciate you. I know Matt appreciates you. I love doing this for the bass community and bringing people together across the world. It's so much fun to do. So thanks again for checking this out, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.